Darius is one of my favourite PlayStation 1 era shoot-'em-ups. I've still got my PS1 version, it's still on a disc, it's probably got some scratches on it, but it does come out and get some love when I've got my retro consoles going. And so when I saw the HD version coming along, I thought, yes. And what it made me do is look at this game from a fresh perspective with new eyes to think, what would a new audience coming in want from this game apart from me with my rose-tinted glasses? And is it still relevant today? And having played the HD version, my answer is absolutely hell yes. And so this video is going to be a largely gushing love letter to Darius and why I think it's so superb, relevant, and so ahead of its time for 1997. In this game, which can be played in 1 or 2 players, you control this ship that's going across what I'd like to call like a space ocean. You're visiting various different planets and your route through them is completely a bit like Outrun. At the end of each stage you can fork off into different paths. So there's about, my maths is terrible, but there's about 20 stages, but you'll only ever play 5 during one playthrough. There's 5 different endings, depending on which route you take and which end planet you end up on, but the route through them is all over the place. Similarly, inside each level, you can split off on a fork as well, so you can take the high line or the low line, and quite often the low line puts you into the ocean, so that you can kind of shoot underwater, which is quite cool. Continuing the ocean theme, all of the bosses and mini-bosses are built of fish. So imagine your surprise when a giant seahorse pops out, or a giant prawn, or a big fish, or a whale, or something like that pops out, and they're your mini-bosses and big bosses. And the bosses are really fantastic because they've got so many different attack patterns and layers to them. It keeps you guessing and on your toes, and some of the boss battles can be a raging war that go on for several minutes if you don't quite get the knack of being able to kill it in a specific way. Now, I've talked of aesthetic so far, but from a gameplay perspective, I love how Darius approaches its weapons and the capture mechanic that it's got. Your weapons are upgradable in several different stages through collecting orbs as you go. Orbs were shown by enemy ships that are in different colours, so red will update your weapon of attack, for example. But those weapons go through stages as well. So if you get, I think it's 6 different red orbs before you die, you no longer have bullets, it will upgrade to a laser. And then if you die, you'll just regress back to the lowest point of a laser, which is really helpful in later stages because bullets don't always cut it in the later stages very well, and so you'll have to dodge just as much as you will attack. Whereas with lasers and then the final stage on from that, you'll get the ability to be more aggressive and clear out the ways around you. Your shields act the same, and so do your bombs, that initially start off just dropping underneath you, but then you can have it kind of flying up above and so on and so forth as you go. The real crazy thing about Darius is its capture mechanic though. You collect these purple orbs that you can then fire out, and it allows you to capture and then add to your arsenal pretty much any enemy ship in the game. And that includes mini-bosses, which I never knew until I looked at the trophies for this game. So imagine me owning this game for 23 years, never know that. The gift that keeps giving. So what you can do, fire out these orbs. Sometimes you have to weaken the mini-boss before you can capture it. But the idea is that it then comes behind you and then you can use its firepower as you go, using their attack patterns back on the enemies. So you can be highly strategic, but it also means that every game feels very different depending on what you decide to capture. And you can go out of your way, try new techniques, new patterns. And what I was also finding as well is that I would try and get something that I thought would be a beef tank so that I could take it into boss battles. Because you can hide behind it and use it as a shield, which I found super helpful, and a new kind of strategy for coping with the bosses, because the bosses are long, hard, and with so many different attack patterns everywhere, it really made me appreciate the boss design as well as the enemy design as well. And you can look through, there's like a capture Wikipedia that's been added to the game, that you can look through all of the different enemies and see what their HP are, the type of attacks that they've got, so that you can be like, I got me a strategy for the future. What this has taught me and made me really appreciate is just how varied and out of the way Darius goes to entertain you. And it's not just from the gameplay perspective and the variety of ways that you can tackle the game. visually, this game is superb and it screams 90s arcade. The backgrounds behind you have got exploding ships everywhere. Things come in and out of the 2D plane, even though it's like 3D objects coming in and out of a 2D plane, if that makes sense. So things feel dynamic, and you kind of like you spin around everywhere. And then you'll change perspective, so it's not you just going forwards or backwards. You'll be like going at a 45-degree angle because there's a giant building in the way or something like that. Fans of Raystorm, I think, will have a great time with G Darius here. The two kind of go hand in hand for me. I was a huge lover of Sagaya. I might have said that wrong. That's always how I've pronounced it. That's one of my favourite shoot-em-ups on the Master System, is the version that I've got. Again, that comes out with the fishy bosses too. But it goes out of its way to just throw everything at you and keep you invested and alive and just wanting to play this game more and more and more. And I can't state that enough, that kind of over-the-top arcade madness is just something that I find is missing from a lot of today's games. And I'm not just talking shoot-em-ups, it's just across the board. I miss this level of crazy, and it is so refreshing to have it back in a game that does not skimp on production value, design, crazy soundtracks, mad sound effects, bold boss battles, and bold gameplay decisions. So my love for G Darius has only grown with this HD version. There is one tiny downside: frame rate. The original game was plagued with frame rate issues, and the HD version does improve it, but expect that frame rate to wildly change throughout the gaming experience. I'd so hoped that the game in a HD format running on a PS4 would have been able to have solved some of these issues, but it hasn't. And so just please know that going in, this game does fall over itself a little bit in terms of FPS, and it drops hugely in very busy areas. That does lead to a few painful deaths, but you can continuously spam for new credits and just keep going with the gaming experience. And whilst it kind of left me a little bit like, oh, that's a shame, I would still recommend this, especially if this is your first rodeo playing G Darius. This is just a perfect window into yesteryear. Just be kind to its frame rate, because it's trying to do an awful lot with what it's got. Written review will be over on highplanegames.com. Oh, I feel so nostalgic and so happy at the same time with this one. Let me know your comments on how you have received G Darius, either for your memories from the original or what you've thought of the HD version down below. Cheers all. Bye bye. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Plane Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.